Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
There is more to me than just my liver. In this episode of Mission Evolution, we'll be exploring the importance of the human experience when addressing health and illness. Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and the X-Zone TV channel, divisions of Relmar McConnell Media Company, with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. As medicine has become more specialized, have we lost sight of the person and their experience? Have we reduced the patient to a bag of parts? After all, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Joining us from Spain to explore the importance of medical humanities is Jonathan McFARLAND. Jonathan is the author of the series New Paradigms in Healthcare, the first book, Health Humanities for Quality of Care. He currently works as an associate professor at the Faculty of Medicine at UAM. Jonathan is also a committee member of the Europe Narrative Medicine Society and is the president of the Doctors as Humanists. His website, doctorashumanist.weebly.com. Jonathan, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
It's a real pleasure to be here, Gwilda. Enormous honor.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad you're able to come all the way from Spain to do it.
Yeah, well, it's not too far, really.
So, what are exactly medical humanities?
This is a very good question. I mean, medical humanities has been changing, like medical ethics, through. It was a term which was started in the 1940s by a surgeon in Australia, I think. But it's gone through many stages. I mean, in medical humanities, in the 1980s, Edmund Pellegrino, a very famous bioethicist working in Georgetown University in the States, in the 1980s was talking about the dehumanization of medicine that long ago. So the medical humanities sprung up from a belief that medicine was going in the wrong direction and it needed to be humanized. And so this is not something new.
So you're the president of the Doctor as a Humanist. What is that?
Well, this is an association where we try to bring together people who see this vision of the dehumanization of medicine and healthcare. And what we aim to do is to be as inclusive as possible. So in the title, it says the doctor, but in reality, we are interested in everybody who's working in a health profession. And we're trying to restore the heart and soul to medicine. It's not an easy task, but it's, I think, incredibly important.
So why do you see medical as humanities so important right now?
Well, I think it's been becoming more important since the time of Edmund Pellegrino, who I mentioned earlier. But since the pandemic, I think it's even more important. And you see, the medical humanities, or you could say health humanities, which brings in more the arts, music, or even critical medical humanities. But for me, they're all really talking about the same thing, which is to rehumanize a health system which has lost the humanization. And since the pandemic, Gwilda, I think it's become even more important because we're not talking about helping just the patients. We're talking about helping the health professionals. The health professionals all around the world, in the States, in England, in Spain, all around the world, have suffered considerably from burnout, a lack of compassion, a lack of self-compassion. So for me, restoring the balance between the two sides of medicine, which are the scientific side, let's say, and the humanistic side, is so important now, because it's been exacerbated, or it's been exaggerated by the pandemic. And I think this is now is so important for this reason.
From what you're saying, it was an issue before the pandemic, and the pandemic just hit the weakest. We broke at the weakest spot. Is that what's going on?
Something like that, yes. I mean, it's. I think in the last 56. I mean, if you go back to the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, we had William Osler, who, probably because in those days they had less tools to help people, less medications, less diagnostic systems, equipment, etc. He was a true humanist. He said, listen to the patient. He's telling you the diagnosis. A good doctor treats the disease. A great doctor treats the patient who has the disease. So I always think I'm looking backwards to move forwards. So I'm trying to restore some of the balance which was present 100 years ago and more. No?
Well, back in the era when we had country doctors. I mean, I'm giving myself away, but my doctor still made house visits when I was a child. Um, the doctor knew the whole family. It was a small town situation. Even in the big cities, it was kind of a small town situation. But things have drastically changed. How's that impacted us, that change?
Well, that's a beautiful analogy about the country doctor, or in England, we say the general practitioner. And I agree with you completely. I mean, there's something important about the continuity of care. The family doctor, or as you say, the country doctor, and a bell rings in my mind about Eugene Smith, who, I don't know if you saw, there was there's a Time issue, the magazine Time issue in the 1950s about a country doctor, Eugene Smith. And it's really very, very interesting because it's a photographic display with text. So it's like introducing text and photos. But the continuity of care, the continuity of a doctor who has seen you from a child for 30 years and seen you grow up is really important. And we're losing that. I also would like to mention another book, which is really took my breath away, which was a book called A Fortunate Woman by Polly Morland. Now, A Fortunate Man by John Berger. John Berger, the famous art critic, but also novelist, painter, and I would say great thinker of the latter half of the 20th century. He wrote a book called A Fortunate Man, which was about a country doctor, a country GP in the south of England. Polly Morland is like a sequel. And because she met not the follow-up to John Berger's doctor, but the one after the next, if you know what I mean. And so she interviewed a woman doctor who took the practice of the country practice that John Berger was talking about. Now, what's important about what Polly Morland said was the practice of medicine has gone through a doctor-oriented situation where we could say paternalistic. Then it's gone to the patient-centered, which is the patient is number one. And Polly Morland says something which I think is critically important. Now we should be thinking about a relationship-based medicine.
That is profound, isn't it?
I think so. Another name who springs to mind is the philosopher Martin Buber, a Jewish philosopher who wasn't particularly writing about the healthcare practice or the relationship between doctor and patient, but he was talking about the relationship between two people. And he had a very famous article or book which is I and thou, and I and it. So I and thou was where the connection between the two people, for example, between you and me, even though we're thousands of miles apart, there's a connection when we're speaking.
Speaking of connections, because I'm of the older generation, and I've seen the medical profession split, change its face many times. I can't help but notice when I go to the doctor's office that I don't get looked at. The poor doctor is having to enter all this data to satisfy or pacify the insurance companies. How much do you feel that the situation that we're in right now, with the dehumanization, if you will, has to do with the demands of the systems versus the doctor's approach?
I mean, this is a critical question, Gwilda. I think the system is one of the main causes, if not the cause. Every country has different systems, but the systems are broken. And the patient, as you say, doesn't look at the doctor, doesn't look at the patient, looks at the computer. There's a term for this, which is the eye patient. So I always say the doctor's not looking at cases or not looking at an eye patient, but is looking at people who are suffering, who are vulnerable, who are frightened. And this is being lost. This is being lost. And I'll give you another quick anecdote, which is from the 1960s, but it's my father was a surgeon. He spent 1 year in Jackson, Mississippi, working in a hospital there in the middle of the civil rights crisis, let's say. And he was operating, and the surgeon said, "Have you counted the stitches?" And he said, "No. Why should I count the stitches?" He said, "Yes, every stitch is worth more dollars."
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Uh, well, we are at the end of this segment, so we're going to have to take a station break. Jonathan and I will return very shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Are you ready for a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat? Get ready to dive into the gripping memoir by Bart Sibrel titled Moon Man. Bart Sibrel takes you on a heart-pounding journey, unmasking the truth behind America's famous Apollo missions. Prepare yourself for hair-raising encounters with agents from the U.S. government's top secret agencies. In Moon Man, Sibrel fearlessly reveals his real-life espionage adventures, shining a light on one of the CIA's best-kept secrets. Brace yourself for shocking revelations, including Sibrel's discovery of privately recorded audio exposing an Apollo astronaut's chilling plot, a plot orchestrated by the CIA. That's right. As Sibrel unveils this groundbreaking evidence, it becomes clear that there is much more to the Apollo missions than meets the eye. Could it be that we've been deceived all along? Moon Man is a gripping page-turner that challenges everything you thought you knew. It's a mind-bending journey into the unknown, where the line between truth and fiction becomes blurred. Don't miss this opportunity to uncover the secrets hidden for decades. Let your curiosity guide you as you join Bart Sibrel on his quest to find the truth. Moon Man, available now at Sibrel.com. That's Sibrel.com. Prepare to have your beliefs shaken to the very core.
We're trying to save lives here. What do the arts have to do with healthcare? With us this hour discussing the humanities in healthcare is Jonathan McFARLAND. Jonathan, how important are the arts in healthcare?
I think they're critical. I think they're absolutely critical. We were talking in the last section about medicine's at a breaking point. I truly believe that medicine and the healthcare system is at a breaking point. You see the nurses and doctors going on strike, which has never happened before in the United Kingdom. And I think the arts, are the way to help and restore the humanity which is lacking. And I
So
think this is critical.
how can that happen? I mean, it's like I said, particularly through the pandemic, we were in do or die time, and
Mhm.
it's not like we're going to sit back and contemplate Beethoven. When we're under those kind of circumstances, how can they help? How do you bring them in that they can help this?
Well, it's good that you say that you can't, Beethoven can't help. But in actual fact, a lot of surgeons listen to Beethoven when they're operating. But that's
I
beside
know.
the
That's why
point.
I brought him up.
That's
Yes.
beside the point. But I will give you an example. There is a psychiatric nurse working in the hospital, the teaching hospital here in Mallorca. She is working with patients, young patients, teenagers with eating disorders. Now, eating disorders is, as everybody knows, is a multifactorial. It's not one disease. It's anorexia nervosa is a multiple. It's kind of lines of disease. The individual has their particular disease. Let's say this. I think it's the same with every disease. And she realizes that these patients are unable to express themselves, are unable to express their emotions. And very often they have a hidden deep anger inside them, Wilder. They feel very frustrated. They have anger inside them. What does she do? She gets them together, a group of 8, 9 teenagers with a very serious disease, and says, okay, we're going to finger paint. And they say, I don't want to get my hair dirty with paint. I don't want to get paint over my clothes. She said, you put a coat on, a plastic coat, and then the teenagers start using their fingers to paint. And it's very interesting the colors they use. They just like get involved in expressing themselves on the floor with the painting with the fingers. And after this, they start to talk about how they really feel inside. And they don't care that they're covered in paint from head to toe. And they hug each other. And then they sit down and they speak. This is, I think, a very beautiful example of how art can help.
And in the psychological arena, I can certainly see that because it's about expression. It helps move expression. But
Mm-hmm.
but if you're in like we were in the pandemic, and it was a unholy nightmare,
Yeah, yeah.
what how could that have eased? How could we have even had the time to bring humanities in to ease the situation?
Well, one of the main problems during the pandemic was seeing our loved ones die uh, without, well, not seeing our loved ones die or being unable to see our loved ones die. And another, I think, a very brilliant medical doctor and author, Gavin Francis, wrote about this. Doctors are taught to be close to their patients and to empathize with their patients, and especially general practitioners or country doctors, as we started talking about. In the pandemic, they couldn't. They had to keep the distance. They were with the protective suit on. So even little things like bringing in a tablet and showing the tablet to an old man dying of the pandemic who could speak to their grandson or granddaughter. Little moments, I would say little moments of micro-compassion. I think micro-compassion is something which can help yourself and help the other. I love the poem by Maya Angelou, I think it is, who says, when you get older, you realize you have two hands. One hand to look after yourself, the other to look after the one next to you or another person. I think the pandemic made us understand that there was a compassion fatigue, and we need to be close to the person who's suffering.
Well, there was not just a compassion fatigue, there was a time fatigue. I mean, we can't sit there and hold a tablet up for one guy while the other guy's dying.
Yeah.
That's what they were having to choose between.
Yeah, I know, and I know because I have a friend who's the president of the European Narrative Medicine Society in Milan, and she was a lot of her friends were in Bergamo in Italy, which is at the center of it. So yes, there was nothing. They had to make decisions about who to save and who not to save, and I mean, luckily, I have never been in that situation.
I don't envy them at
Luckily,
all.
I don't envy them at all, and I think that I had some hope before at the beginning of the pandemic that we might become more compassionate and have more feeling for the other person. I'm not sure whether it's really happening, Wilda. I'm not
Well,
sure whether it's happening.
don't you think that, I know you're not a psychologist, so I'm not asking you to make a diagnosis here, but don't you think that there's collective PTSD that really kind of shuts down the heart because everybody's still in fight or flight?
Yes, well, I would definitely say this is true. And another very good friend of mine is a psychiatrist in Seattle, David Kapas, who's written many books, and he's a fabulous guy. When I put on my first symposium, he sent me one of his books, Rehumanizing Medicine, without knowing me. In actual fact, I don't even know him. I know him virtually, like I know you. But he and I have been suffering together. Both of us suffering from different illnesses, and we have been texting each other, asking each other, "How's your KU, Kapas unit? How's your MU, McFARLAND unit?" And without a doubt, everybody's suffering now. Everybody's suffering now in some way or other. And so we're having this communication to see if our experiences can help the other, and to see whether we can help, just by talking about it. I think if we talk about things, if we communicate.
But it all got overcome by events when we were so overwhelmed. So how has healthcare become dehumanized for both doctors and patients?
Well, doctors now have the problem of, multiple problems. The system, you said, looking at the computer. Time. How much time do they have with a patient? Benefits or profits over care. There's the dichotomy between curing and caring. Well, how often can you cure a patient? Now, more than before. But shouldn't you be looking at caring for the patient as well? So that's on the side of the doctors, just off the top of my head. The patient suffers because the patient is sometimes defenseless. Now, I can give you a very nice example of a surgeon who was a patient. So this maybe puts the two sides together. And he gave a class to second-year students, and he showed a photograph. The photograph had three chairs. The first chair was a very distinguished surgeon with his suit and tie. The second chair was his clothes folded over, beautifully, immaculate. And the third chair was the same surgeon with a gown, a hospital gown. When you're a patient, you feel very vulnerable. And I speak from experience. And I think that that triptych, let's say, of images tells us a lot.
If given when we go into a hospital or a hospital situation, much of our persona is stripped away right down to our clothes. How can the humanities help with that? How can it bring humanity back to the individual?
Well, it's not an easy thing because the patient is stripped down, and I, even just with the gown, you feel kind of naked, and it's a feeling which is, unless you've experienced it, you don't feel it. And I have experienced it, and many other people, and doctors, when they experience it, change. I'm not saying that I want all doctors to be patients, but I think that doctors change their approach when they've been patients. And I think they understand that there's a very famous film which is called The Doctor with William Hurt. You've probably seen it. And in one scene, he tells the residents, okay, today you're going to be patients. And they'll go, what? Impossible. No, you're all going to have, you've learned all the Latin names. You're going to have a real names, patient names. You're going to have all the tests. And they all go. And then they all come out with their gowns. And then the nurses bring in the trolleys with all the equipment for all the different tests. I'm not saying that, although I do ask students whether they would do that if they were the teachers or the professors.
It's absolutely eye-opening. We are going to have to go into another station break. Jonathan and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you interested in evolving with the times and becoming all you can be? Don't you wish there was one place to find the latest information to help guide you through the process? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio TV. Join me on my mission to find the latest evolutionary knowledge and tools. The guests on Mission Evolution are leading experts in a wide variety of divergent topics, including allopathic, holistic, and integrative medicine, epigenetics, enlightenment, quantum physics, meditative practices, environmental issues, spiritual evolution, trauma healing, and so much more. Mission Evolution Radio TV is aired worldwide through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, X-Zone TV Channel 32 on Simul TV. You can enjoy our archives of radio or TV shows with our compliments at www.missionevolution.org. Come see the amazing lineup of guests and topics. With more than 200 episodes to choose from, you're sure to find what you're looking for. Visit www.missionevolution.org. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Has healthcare become dehumanized? With us discussing medical humanities is Dr. You get to be a doctor now.
Everybody thinks I'm a doctor. No problems. Yeah.
No problem. Is Jonathan McFARLAND. His website, doctorasahumanist.weebly.com. Jonathan, when we're thinking about things becoming dehumanized, if you will, how much of it does it have to do with the fact that we've broken medicine into so many separate parts that people are just focusing on my liver? Okay, I'm here. It's not just my liver. How is that affecting the whole thing?
Well, that's a great question. And I love the title of today's interview, There Is More to Me Than Just My Liver, because I think that tells you so much about how far we've come, or how the road or the path we've taken. Specialization is obviously very important, Wilda. Obviously. I mean, if I had operation on my foot, and if you have a surgeon who's dedicated and does all his operations, is an expert on feet, he will be obviously very, very specialized, and this will be helpful, obviously. However, I sometimes feel that the patient is tossed from one specialist to another. They say, okay, we've looked at the oncological part. Okay, over to you. We've looked at your problem with whatever. This super specialization is both a good thing and a bad thing. It means that, as you said before, we are looked at as a bag of parts, or like a machine. No, we're looked at as okay. The neurologist a problem with the brain, the cardiac surgeon a problem with the heart, but we're more than that, Gwilda, as you and I both know. And the doctor has lost the vision of the person. So there's a beautiful quotation from, well, it was told to me by a professor in Johns Hopkins. He said, you've always got to look for the person in the patient.
It seems like we have compartmentalized by specializing.
Yes.
And what's really going on with the person is someplace between the compartments.
Yes.
Okay, so how are we going to decompartmentalize enough to access the continuum of a person and still keep the benefits of the specialization?
Well, I think there's many ways to do this. You talked about when your experience, or the nowadays when you see the doctor doesn't see you. The doctor's looking at the computer, probably doesn't stand up. A doctor has a very good opportunity to get to know the patient. For example, instead of sitting behind the desk, when the patient comes in, the doctor can go, open the door, shake hands. Now that you can shake hands, because before it's with the elbow, shake hands. And while he or she is walking with the patient to sit down, they can have a little chat. How's the family? How's your mother? Have you had a good day? Little things. I think little things like this, even touching the patient. Now, maybe we could get into problems because with problems of privacy and all of that. But I think the doctor has an enormous privilege to be with people at critical moments in their lives. And the presence of the doctor and the touch of the doctor or the surgeon, a hand held, an arm, you touch the arm. These are really important, Gwilda.
But they
Really?
don't teach that in medical school, do they?
No,
They don't teach that
no,
in medical school. In
no.
fact, so much of what a doctor, and I've had doctors complain to me about this, so much of they got on deck to help people. And instead, they're appeasing insurance companies. That's what most of their time is spent on. They have to be on that computer. They have to get the right diagnosis code. And pretty soon, the person is just reduced to numbers, and they're only given a certain amount of time with each person.
And this is a disaster. And this is why there's so much burnout in doctors and medical students. Now, I don't know the American system so well, of course, because I'm here in Europe. But believe me, there are medical students who are, when in their first year, they have a great illusion, a great enthusiasm, a great desire to help people.
And what a
And
tragedy to watch that beaten out of them.
it's a tragedy, Gwilda. It's a tragedy because these are youngsters whose life, or maybe from an age of 5 or 6, they've always wanted to be doctors. And then the curriculum is crammed full with scientific knowledge, which is important. But in Spain, for example, the students from the 3rd year, 6-year course, are not training to be doctors. They're training to do an exam to become specialists.
Yeah, back to specializing ourselves out of the whole.
Yes, I mean, back to not looking after both the doctor and the patient.
Yeah, nobody's winning here, from what I'm seeing,
Nobody's winning
except
here.
the insurance companies, possibly. Not that I have anything against them. It's just the way things
No.
have unfolded in not a good way. How
I
can we
would
turn that
completely agree.
around? How can we turn that around? I mean, we've been hypothesizing, and we've been, giving out ideas how wonderful it would be, but practically, on the
Well,
practical side of it, how
on
can we do it?
on the practical side, Gwilda, we need to integrate the humanities and humanism. Now, I would say, I would look at two ways. Humanities can be disciplines like literature, art, sociology, philosophy is really important, anthropology, etc. But it's also humanism, the role model, the mentor, the doctor who knows how to treat patients. He makes as big an impact, or she makes as big an impact on the student as the humanities, as the disciplines. But they need to be integrated into the system, the education. This is why I gave a talk to not the not the insurance companies, but the local health minister and the dean of the faculty here in Mallorca. And I said, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And then I said, let's just change that a little bit. There's something rotten in the state of the medical education. And then I said, humanism needs to be integrated into the courses.
And it's not.
No,
Okay.
it's not. It's not. It's not.
Well,
It's not.
there's so much to
It's not.
learn on the technical side. There really is. And when we're not trained in the humanities, a lot of us didn't necessarily even grow up with them. So
This
it's
is
a
another.
skill set that no one has.
This is another thing which is lacking. So it's not only lacking in the medical school. There's a big push towards the sciences, and a big move away from the humanities.
In all of the
Which
school systems,
in
isn't it the same where
all
you
of the
are?
school systems,
Hmm.
yes, everywhere. In England now, they're pushing mathematics and taking away philosophy or the humanities
And,
to the
and
detriment of
yeah,
everybody.
and it's worldwide, and it's our vision perishes, doesn't it?
It's worldwide, but what's interesting is in the developing countries, there is more humanism in medicine than in the developed countries. I speak from experience because I was in Alexandria in Egypt a few months ago, and with very little resources, they're doing so much for children with cancer, with using art therapy, with elderly people with dementia. So I always think that there's hope, and I remember John Berger again. I'm saying John Berger. He says you got to catch hold of hope like the flame in darkness. We've got to be hopeful, Wilder. We've got to bring some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise,
How much is our rapidly growing technology played in with this?
this is a very big question. Artificial intelligence, for example, and humanities. Now, there are two, it's like the sword of Damocles, no? There are two sides to this. Will artificial intelligence let the doctors have more time to care for the patient, to speak to the patient, to be present with the patient, to touch the patient, to be empathetic and have compassion for the patient, or the opposite? I don't
Depends on
know.
how we use it, doesn't it?
Depends on how we use it. Depends on who's using it. Depends on who's controlling it. This is the big dilemma now, and this is the big dilemma. I have no answer. We have the questions, but no answer. And but it's more important to have the questions. I think it was Albert Einstein who said, if you 95% there if you've got the question right. We need to look at the questions.
Well, we've got questions here.
Do we have the answers?
Do we have the answers? I'm counting on you.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. Yeah. Doing my best.
We're just about out of time in this segment, but do you see us as being in a healthcare crisis?
Without doubt. Without a doubt.
How long have we been there?
I was 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
I think with the rise of the incredibly important rise of the technological side of medicine, we've been in a crisis because it's been separated from the humanistic side of medicine.
Well, it is time for that station break. Please stay with us as Jonathan and I continue to explore a kinder, gentler side of medicine. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you interested in evolving with the times and becoming all you can be? Don't you wish there was one place to find the latest information to help guide you through the process? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio TV. Join me on my mission to find the latest evolutionary knowledge and tools. The guests on Mission Evolution are leading experts in a wide variety of divergent topics, including allopathic, holistic, and integrative medicine, epigenetics, enlightenment, quantum physics, meditative practices, environmental issues, spiritual evolution, trauma healing, and so much more. Mission Evolution Radio TV is aired worldwide through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, X-Zone TV Channel 32 on Simul TV. You can enjoy our archives of radio or TV shows with our compliments at www.missionevolution.org. Come see the amazing lineup of guests and topics. With more than 200 episodes to choose from, you're sure to find what you're looking for. Visit www.missionevolution.org. Speaking of medicine with a heart, what about our poor doctors? What about our healthcare providers? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Jonathan McFARLAND, author of the series New Paradigms in Healthcare. Jonathan, it would appear patients are not the only ones under stress by our current system. What about the doctors and nurses?
Well, I mean, they're under considerable stress. And how can we help them? Well, let's start at the students. We've been talking about the students, but the students feel that when they study medicine, they have to finish with all their other hobbies. So if a student was a pianist, they have to stop that. Or if they like writing poetry, they have to stop that. My advice would be to the students, do not stop these activities, these humanistic activities, which are a part of who you are, and continue with these.
Well, Jonathan, I mean, it's that sounds great, but med school is brutal. There's no time for anything, particularly once they start doing their where they work in the hospital there for a while. What is it called anyway? I just they're burning the candle at both ends. How can we arrange it so that they can keep their lives?
It's brutal, but does it need to be brutal? Technology is very, very important, but the doctor needs to know how to treat a person. And we talked about the body of parts or the bag of parts. No, the doctor needs to know the other side. There's a very important writer, a doctor in England called Iona Heath. She was the president of the Royal College of General Practitioners. Country doctor, and she said there's a dichotomy in medicine between the humanistic and scientific, between, let's say, poetry and reason, between the quantitative, the qualitative, between emotions, and between the science of medicine. And doctors say, but can I become emotional with a patient? Can I show my emotions? Because all doctors have been taught to have this professional distance. I think that for doctors to show their emotions is very important. Not always, but the patient needs to know that who's looking after him or her is a person as well. I think that there's this concept that if the doctor is too close to the patient, they get affected. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe. I'm giving you lots of ideas, but am I answering any of the questions? Because the questions are so big that maybe the answers are not so straightforward.
Well, we need to figure out some place to start. Where would you suggest that it be?
I suggest that the students and the doctors take time away, maybe, from their studies, that they continue with their hobbies, that they look after themselves, they have compassion for themselves, which very often they don't. I like the metaphor of kintsugi. Kintsugi, as you well know, is a Japanese form of repairing ceramics. And it's also like a philosophy of restoring something which has been broken and making it even more beautiful, because they restore the ceramics, the broken pieces, and put them together with gold. I see humanism and humanities as the gold joining together the scientific parts of medicine. Or another metaphor, Gwilda, another metaphor from another Japanese word, komorebi. Now, in the West, we don't have a word which explains the light coming through the trees. This is komorebi. The humanities is the light coming through the tree. The tree is the structure of the scientific disciplines, and the light coming through the leaves is humanism, the humanity. They need to be together.
Would you see that the original education, when the doctor decides to move into becoming a doctor, is the point of entry to start making a correction here?
Yes, even before.
Before. Okay, even before. So where? Where before?
Well, we were talking about the fact that the sciences are kind of what C.P. Snow in 1948 talked about the two cultures, the scientific culture and the humanistic or literary culture. And they've been separating like this. This was a big mistake. The two cultures should be joined together. There are many doctors and many philosophers and many physicists. For example, Carlo Rovelli, the famous quantum physicist, is also really interested in philosophy. These two sides is what makes us human.
But everything has become more polarized in our current society.
This is true. This is true.
So when we're in a soup of polarization, what tools do we need to start bringing this back together, to start using the gold to meld us back together?
Well, let's start at young children. I'm not against technology. I love technology. I have my iPhone and etc., etc. But there needs to be a balance. I saw a little boy of 6 or 7 in the hospital who was very nervous, jumping up and down, opening the doors, and his father was looking at his mobile, saying, "Pedro, don't do that, don't do that." I had the urge to tell the father, put down your telephone, look at your child, hug your child, and speak to your child. This can be taught, or this should be retaught, possibly, from a very early age.
It seems like that, like you said, the technology has, or our, not the technology, our obsession with it has created this segregation. I saw this
Yeah.
wonderful thing. It was a picture, like I saw in finishing school, of exactly where to put all your silverware at the table.
Yeah.
The water glass, the white wine glass, the red wine
Yeah,
glass.
yeah,
Okay. And then over here it had a little square. It says cell phone.
yeah.
Okay. That's really where we've gotten to, is the classic way of grace and sitting together and spending time together has been broken by technology, by our obsession with technology. Has that happened in the medicine as well? I mean,
Yeah.
they run these tests, they're looking at the tests. Are they ever looking at the patient? How can we get back to the human side, like you say, the humanities, when
Well,
we're so separated from it as individuals?
it's a very, very, very important question. And by trying to do things like we are trying to do, it's the young doctors now take CT scans, MRIs, all the tests, defensive medicine, and they don't take a clinical history, or they don't do a physical examination. This is, from my point of view, malpractice. This is completely the wrong way to look at medicine. A professor or a head of department in the hospital here told me that he had a heart problem. He went into his own emergency department. Nobody took a clinical history. Nobody gave him a physical examination. And this is the way we're moving, and we need to stop it. And we need to stop it very soon. And we need to teach the students that behind diabetes in bed number 2 is a person, a woman who has a family, whose mother is ill, etc.
Well,
This
Jonathan,
needs to be taught.
we're getting close to the end of the show. So it's time to ask you, what is your mission?
My mission is to rehumanize healthcare, medicine, to restore the heart and soul to medicine.
A very worthy cause. And how do you see the world changing should this start to occur?
We would treat other people with respect. We would treat other people with more compassion. We would hold a hand out for other people. And I think it's a global movement. It needs to be a global movement. We need to learn from other peoples, from indigenous peoples. The indigenous people can teach us a lot. And doctors can learn a lot from indigenous people.
What can they learn?
They can learn the importance of the earth, the land. They can learn from the respect the indigenous people have for the earth, which we're also losing. But this is another topic, planetary health. We don't have enough time to talk about it today. But we should learn from others rather than cut ourselves off from others.
Do you believe, and like I said, we're just about out of time, but do you believe that the planetary health and the crisis that the planet is being reflected in the human being?
Yes, definitely. And I even think I'm even very interested in introducing an ecologically dimensioned medical humanities.
Interesting.
So I'm even toying with the idea of a book entitled Earth Doctors. When I say toying with the idea, it's we're working on it. Earth Doctors.
Well, Unfortunately, we are out of time. Jonathan, thanks so much for all you do and for coming on the show.
Gwilda, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Our guest this hour has been Jonathan McFARLAND, author of the series New Paradigm in Healthcare. Jonathan is the president of the Doctor as a Humanist. To find out more about Jonathan and all he has to offer, visit his website, doctorasahumanist.weebly.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing the latest information, resources, and support to our evolving world.